Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bob and Chad, Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. Excited to be here. We've had some nice weather here in Iowa and in the Midwest, so we're getting that bug to go racing and excited. We've got a special guest with us, Steve Arpin. Steve, of course, originally from Canada, done a lot of Wasota racing, done a tremendous amount of modified racing. And so tell me, what all do you do now, Steve?
Now I don't get to do a whole bunch of racing anymore, but still get to love every day working in the sport. So we're running Longhorn chassis now and building a bunch of late models and a bunch of modifieds and literally loving every day of my life getting to go to work working in this sport we all love so much.
Awesome. So you don't do too much racing anymore.
Honestly, I think I raced like maybe 5 times last year, and then actually young Ethan Dotson wanted to do more modified racing, and he bought my whole modified turnkey last week. So now my modified's gone. So it's honestly I've got a 1 year old and a 3 year old at home right now, and I'm just absolutely loving the time I get to spend at home when I don't have to be at the racetrack for
Sure.
for work stuff. So absolutely loving the time I get to spend at home right now, in between work trips. So we'll get back to racing when I get a little bit further down the road.
Well, you've kind of earned it. I mean, you've raced for, I don't know how long I've known you, but it seems like forever. And I mean, you raced at modified intensely, and then you did that drift racing. So tell me about that.
I'm glad I got married first because it would be hard to find a girl racing a Ford Fiesta, right? So no, I'm just kidding. They were incredible little pieces of equipment. 0 to 60 mile an hour in about 1.8 seconds. 12 inches of wheel travel per corner. Um, four cylinder 2 liter engine that put out 1,000 horsepower. That was restricted down to about 650, with a turbo on it and a full anti-lag system, so you never had any lag on the turbo. Um, it's unbelievable. I guess the best way I could describe it is if you have one of those little RC cars that you see just like zipping around, like they turn, then they just accelerate so fast, and they turn and they accelerate and you jump them and all that. We got to do that in real life. So, and the coolest part about it for me, just looking back at where the sport has all taken me, is I was fortunate enough. I got to race all over the world. Like my first race was my first time ever seen one was in Brussels, Belgium, which was just a spur of the moment thing. They asked me if I wanted to race in Brazil at the X Games, and I said sure. So they flew me to Brussels, Belgium. I was on the ground for about 6 hours in Belgium, and tested a car in a parking lot, and came back home and got a visa to go to Brazil, and that was all she wrote. I didn't miss a race after that for a number of years. So they were they're super cool. Got to travel the world, see the world, experience so much, meet incredible people, and one of the biggest things for me was just through all my experiences, I've got to be around so many people that have taught me so much about the business aspect of the sport,
Sure.
and and how to try and be successful at that side of it. So learned so much from so many people in so many different disciplines that we've been able to take back and try and apply it, to our sport here.
Hmm. Interesting. And you ran some in the truck series.
Yep, yep. We ran the truck series, ran some Xfinity stuff, did a whole bunch of cup testing for Hendrick Motorsports for a good while. Got to do all sorts of fun stuff.
Awesome.
I think we might. I'm not sure if it stood or not. We had for the longest time. I think we might have the track record at Chicagoland in the Truck Series still, and then they tore it down, so it's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. So tell me, how did the Longhorn deal come about?
Honestly, it was all kind of COVID related. Um, we had some people talking to us about asking me if I'd be interested in looking at it a little bit, and so on and so forth, and talking about the modified side of it. And COVID hit, and one of the things I've learned just all on the way is everything's about people, right? You guys have both been in business, and it doesn't matter how good of what you think you got. If you don't have the right people, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And we had assembled such an amazing team on the Rallycross side of it. Well, when COVID hit, Rallycross literally stopped, came to a screeching halt. Um, our revenue stopped. Our if you're not racing, you can't honestly bill your partners, right, and bill your sponsors. And the only source of revenue we had was sponsorship. So Rallycross literally stopped, and we had to do something fast to just generate a little bit of revenue to keep our team together, just to see what was next. Because if we had to reassemble the team that we had, it would have been impossible. So obviously, when the modified conversation came up, I felt that was something that I knew that I could jump right back into, that I felt
Sure.
like I could probably get fired up relatively quick. And especially partnering with Longhorn, they had established such a name for themselves that it just felt like the right fit. So we went ahead and made a deal on the modified portion of it. And through all of our conversations with Justin Labonte, Kevin Rumley, and the whole team over there, it became evident really quick that so many of our strengths with what we were doing on our side, on the modified side, was what they were missing on the late model side. And so much of what they were doing on the late model side, from the development standpoint and all that, was what we wanted to continue doing on the modified side. So all of our strengths were the other side's weaknesses, and vice versa. And it just was a natural fit to keep that conversation going. The modified thing was a temporary thing. It wasn't going to be sustainable on its own, right? So if we wanted to keep that going with the facility and everything we had to scale it. So it was just a perfect conversation into just merging everything, and buying out the rest of Longhorn. And Justin Labonte stayed on board. He's still at the shop every day with us. And Paul and John Leach, who have been my partners in everything I've done, and just incredible partners and friends and business mentors, and just all of the above, and everything I've been involved in. So it's one of those deals where we just have the perfect group of people, on the ownership side, on the partnership side there, and then just in all different aspects of the company, to keep on building this brand we're trying to build, and building badass race cars.
Well, and you definitely have a group of outstanding racers. I mean, you've got some pretty good racers in your stuff that make, that definitely been very successful. Like Ethan is a prime example. I worked with Ethan for years, and he's kind of one of those youngsters that I started out with when he was young, and then when it was time to, past what I could do for him, it was time for him to go further, and he ended up down there, and so it was exciting to see him being successful.
He's just I just think the world of that kid. Honestly, I've had so many people, everything from the Nelson family to the Leach family to my family, to the Sorensens and Jay Clark up in Minnesota, and just so many people, that the Emil family out of Canada, they raced a bunch of IMCA stuff, that have believed in me so much, and gave me opportunity. That as I started to find success in my career, one of my dreams was to find a young guy that just didn't have a whole bag full of money, and just worked his butt off, and was out there just digging and winning races and whatever he could get in, and try and help them. And so Ethan was that guy for me, the first one for me, and I hope to do many more. But Ethan was the first one that just, like, I saw the kid, and I saw so much drive, and just so much ability and talent and personality and everything in him, that that was honestly trying to help him get going. And all I did was give him a platform to show everyone what he's capable of, right? He did everything else on his own. And to be a part of that is just, it's a dream come true for me. And seeing where he's at now, and seeing him thrive where he's at now, is just it pumps me up. I'm pretty excited for the boy.
Yeah, well, me too. I'm glad that he found a home there with you, because I mean he is such a hard worker, and he's so dedicated. He's so loyal, and I mean he's just a great young man.
Yeah. So, and it's cool to see modified guys coming up and make it in the late model world, right? Like, we
Yeah,
got
that's pretty
RTJ up there.
exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, and then, like you said, though, we have one of the things we're so fortunate of is we've got, like, when you look around and you look at all the teams that have put their faith in us for their race cars, like I tell our guys all the time, it's like, enjoy it. Like, take a look at this. And like, it's like, guys, these guys can pick any race car they want. Heck, they can probably have cars given to them at places if they want to go there, and they choose to come to us. And it's like, enjoy it, gotta like lavish it a little bit here, but then realize how much of a responsibility it is too, right?
Yeah.
Because these guys are pouring a lot of their hard-earned money into these programs, and it's our responsibility to make sure they have what they need to go out and do the job they need to do. So it's exciting, but nerve-wracking at the same time.
Well, and Tim Ward's going to actually jump into a late model next year, and he bought a used car,
Yep.
a used Longhorn car. I talked to him quite a bit the other night at Jake McBurney's race party, and he's pretty excited to get going in that late model deal. He's pretty pumped up, and so that'll be interesting to see how he does with that.
I think it's, I don't think it's very, I don't think it's going to be very suspenseful. I'm pretty sure he'll be pretty competitive right out of the gate. That boy's a talent.
Yeah, he definitely does a good job. Definitely does a good job. Well, we've got a question. My question revolves around steering wheel size. See a lot of small ones in some of the in-car cameras. Isn't it better to have a large one or not be ogling from 10 to 3? Well, that'd be a good question for our resident driver here. What do you think?
Honestly, I've always been kind of a middle of the road guy, but I think that very much so just boils down to driver preference, right? In the reality of it, there's a prime range of how much wheel input the car is going to need, and each driver has a different comfort level with how much they're willing to tug on that wheel, right? So you can do that a couple different ways. You can do it with the speed in the rack or the steering box on a modified, or you can do it with steering wheel size, right? So if you're if you're only willing to turn your hands this much, but you need more wheel input into it, you can go with the smaller steering wheel and you'll have that effect by still moving your hands the same amount. So I think that's a big thing of, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to that. I think if you're more of a nervous driver and more of just a periodic racer, I think a bigger wheel will probably help you be a little bit smoother. If
Yeah.
you're really calm behind the wheel and take deep breaths and are really smooth with your inputs, you can probably get away with smaller wheels. So but I definitely don't think there's a if someone's doing a monkey see, monkey do on somebody's wheel size, thinking that that might be an advantage or disadvantage, I would say that's probably chasing the wrong wormhole.
Um, we've got Jason has a funny Arpin story. Maybe 10 years ago in Vegas, when Steve Arpin was winning about everything, he had just piled up with someone or somebody, and the other guy was upset and met him on pit road, and the guy wanted to fight. Steve says, I'll fight you, but we're both getting kicked out of here if we do. The other guy gave him a bunch of directions and walked away.
Been a good negotiator.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he probably would have kicked my butt. I'm not much of a fighter. Man, I tell you what, every time I went to Vegas, I think I was very consistent in Vegas in having somebody wanting to fight me. I think I don't know what it was about that place for me.
Huh. Yeah, no doubt. Well, we've got plenty of room for questions and any more Steve Arpin stories and whatever. So, how's everything going at Where's Machine? I haven't had a chance to say anything, Chad.
Well, it was March Madness officially kicked off today. So this was the first Monday in March, and it was absolute insanity. So people are getting ready to go and getting their cars ready. And those that didn't race in Florida are like, holy cow, I got a race car. So I probably better get working on it. So no, we were busy with that. We're busy prepping for this weekend. We got 2 shows. So March Madness is not only the busiest month of the year, but we got 6 shows in 4 weeks. So we're I've tasked my people with a big heap here, but I think we got it under control. So we're excited for this week, Rochester, Minnesota, the Midwest Motorsports Expo. I don't know. I brought this so you can pause it and then look at all the companies that are coming. We're really looking forward to it. We're super pumped. We got over 60 vendors, racetrack manufacturers. So we're really looking forward to it. It's about 20 more vendors than we had last year. So we need the racers, to come and support. The only way we're going to get bigger companies like maybe Longhorn next year to come is to have a lot of people there, right? So we got companies traveling from as far away as Washington and Pennsylvania, all over. So we need the racers to come and support this Saturday at the Mayo Civic Center in Rochester, 9 to 4. It's a $5 entry. We were almost free. We're trying to cover the cost of renting the facility with the manufacturer's booth space, but we came a little bit short, so we're going to have to charge $5 to get in to cover the expenses. But I think we have enough vendors now and big companies there that it should be worth your time to come. And within, if you're 3, 4, 5 hours away, even, I think it's worth coming. If you haven't been able to go to PRI, this is a lot of the companies that go to there, and so we're super pumped for this weekend.
Well, I thought it was a great show last year, so this is exciting. If you got more vendors, and then talk about that race.
Promoters,
The what?
the promoters roundtable.
Yeah, talk about that.
Yep. So my race pass came on board. They're gonna basically put on a promoters workshop. So all the racetracks and promoters that are coming to the show, they're gonna have a round table at 2:00 and get together. And my race pass does a lot for a lot of the racetracks with the timing, and then they build websites and they do all kinds of marketing stuff to help racetracks promote their track and succeed. And so they've offered to do this for free for all the racetracks that come. And then once they're done at 3:00, we're going to open it up to the general population that's there. And then you can ask questions about, how much is the pit pass going to be at Fountain City, or what's the modifieds going to pay here, or general questions from the audience that's there. So we're super pumped to have that be a part of it, and looking forward to what that has to offer late in the afternoon there.
Awesome. Next question. Daniel wants to know if you are planning on making a straight bar in place of the J bar that will fit with a fifth arm.
Well, I mean, we have a pinion mount that has a bottom. I assume you're talking about underneath, possibly with.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He's
Although
got a GRT, one of our GRTs with the fifth arm that runs USMTS.
Yeah, we got a double-sided pinion mount. So if you want to run the shorty straight bar on the left side, we have that. If you want to run underneath the center line, we have that. And then we have the 415, which is actually the center of the pinion. So we got a lot of different panel bar options, a lot of pinion mount options. If you jump on the website and go to that category, it should give them. As far as clearing the fifth arm, I'm not sure how that's built, but most of them should clear the lift arm, I would think.
I would think so, because if the J bar,
if your J bar clears, you should be totally fine there.
You should be fine. Brady made a comment, broomstick in Florida, like in the 04-ish, LOL. So I'm assuming, Steve, you must know about that one.
Don't know anything what he's talking about. Have no clue. We might have had. Honestly, it was one of those things where it was probably good enough times when that kind of stuff was going on that I don't remember quite all the details of it. But no, we used to have some pretty good broomstick kicking competitions, and some of them got a little out of hand back in the day.
Yeah.
That was back when we were young and immature.
I mean, you were young, and so you had to have fun. I mean, what the heck? If you didn't have fun then, you're going to grow up, and then what the hell's going to happen?
Isn't that the truth? So
yeah.
No, it's super cool to hear about that trade show up there in Rochester, and we're that's. I love Deer Creek Speedway. I love all the racing up there. I've told everyone down here for so long. It's like there's everyone that kind of complains about any tracks and stuff up there. That you guys are so fortunate with how beautiful facilities you have, how awesome the racing is up there, how many places you have to go race. God, 3, 4, 5 nights a week sometimes it seems like. And I'd love to be involved in that show next year. So we'll definitely keep that conversation going. We actually got the Sorensens up there in Rochester, and they're dealing our late models and modifieds now. So maybe we'll team up with them and get something going in that show next year. We'll come up and be a part of it with you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, like I said, and the thing, for me, I like the 1 day show deal. Of course, I mean, I like 1 day races. I mean, it doesn't tie up the whole weekend. You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money on a hotel, and so it just makes sense to me. Um, Deer Creek Speedway is probably at the top of my list of most favorite places to be. I mean, I love going up there. It's sad that we had to move the Harris Clash, just because. I mean, the biggest problem in that area, racing's super strong, just not IMCA,
Yep.
and so it's hard to get fans there to come and watch an IMCA race because their weekly show is a pretty damn good show.
It's one of the few places in the country that when no matter what sanctioning body comes in, whether it be World of Outlaws or Lucas Oil Late Models or the USMTS or any of the biggest shows, the locals are always a contender, right?
Oh yeah,
So it's not very many places in the country can say that, and that area is definitely one of them.
yeah, no doubt about that. Joe, what do you think about a very rigid stock car and a non-rigid stock car? Well, I don't know. I guess if you're asking my opinion, I think they both kind of have their place in one aspect of it. A rigid car, I think is going to, when the racetracks get real dry and slick, probably work a little bit better. They might not qualify as good. A car that's more flexible will tend to qualify a little better. Sometimes when the racetrack gets slick and slows down, I don't know if they work as good. I tend to lean more towards a non-rigid car. I think they're for the average racer. I think it's easier to hit the setup with a non-rigid car. They might not be fast every night, but they're going to be good 9 out of 10 nights, and that's just kind of what. Not every racer is a superstar. They just want to go out and race and feel like they're competitive. And I think with a non-rigid car, you don't have to be so specific on setup. What's your thoughts, Steve?
Honestly, I'm right with you, 100% in line with you. The way I look at it is a stiffer car to an extent, right? You can't have it too rigid, but the stiffer car is probably going to have the ability to have a little bit of a higher peak performance. But it's a lot harder to get there. Your box of what's going to get that is a lot smaller, and the more flex you have, I feel like it's going to give you not you won't get that peak performance, but you're going to have a lot bigger of a box of where you can perform. So there's definitely a fine line, and not everyone goes data testing before every race, and not everyone has all the tools and instruments and crew chiefs and all that to get everything perfect all the time. And even when you do have all that, it's hard to hit it. So I think definitely, I know with our stuff, we have a twist rig at our shop. We measure cars on a regular basis, and we've actually found that a less rigid car is a lot more consistent and a lot easier for our customers to tune across the board.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've always felt, and it's just kind of what we always went towards. So now, what's that twister? What's that thing you got? The
So we
twister
built
thing?
a we built a twist rig to effectively just measure the torsional the twist rate of the car, the torsional strength of the car. and really understand what changes a car, right? So I think the question until the end of time, if anyone had it figured out, they'd probably be on a boat somewhere, right? Because
Yeah.
even at the NASCAR Cup level, when they're building their own cars in each shop, they had budget through the roof to do whatever they wanted, but they still had their favorite cars, right? So we're putting a lot of effort into just trying to understand what it is that makes a car different than the other, what processes, what different tubing does, what just every little thing that can change a car. So we're constantly investing in technology and developing ways to measure the cars to just understand them to the best of our ability.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. Um,
Sometimes it
okay.
creates more questions than answers, unfortunately. But
Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, I've been involved in some of them things. It's
yeah,
like maybe I would have been better off if I didn't know this.
isn't that the truth?
Um, what should I be running air pressure in the sport mod? I'm running 16 on the right front, 16 on the right front, 14 on the right rear, 12 in the left rear, and 10 in the left front. Boy, Don, I think you got her dead on, man. I'm assuming sport mod, you're talking about an IMCA car. That sounds pretty good. If you get on a real heavy racetrack, you might want to bump that right rear up to 15 pounds with that sidewalk, because you got to remember we've got a DOT type tire, and they're not made to run low air pressure. So you keep that in mind. And that's the other thing, back to that non-rigid car or a rigid car. Depends on what tire you're on.
It's very true.
Because I can remember back when we were building late models, and we learned this by accident, but our stuff, we had all 065 nose bars. Well, that's when they had the big slope noses and everything, the aluminum noses. And those cars worked pretty good, but everybody complained about the fact that when they run underneath somebody, it would smash the nose bars in. Okay, well, then we'll just build the nose bars thicker. Well, so we built the nose bars thicker, and those cars didn't work for crap. Now, if you put them on a soft tire, they were really good. But on that stiffer IMCA tire that we had to run, those cars were terrible. I mean, they'd be bad fast one night out of 10. But the window, just go back to what you were saying. The window is so small that it just made it tough. Needless to say, that didn't help our late model program at all. Jeff, for a USRA stock car, is there any value to running a longer left front control arm? And what's your thoughts on the shorter right front spring? Thanks, love the show. Um, I mean, I think there's advantages. If the rules allow you to run different length upper control arms, I always tend to like the longer left A-frame because it doesn't change camber as much, and a lot of times the left front you don't run as much camber, so it's a little nicer to have it um, stay more stationary. Um, the shorter right front spring, I've not had a lot of experience with that. What about you, Steve?
I haven't played with it much myself either, but I know there's a lot of attention being put towards right front packages right now, and there's a lot of speed being found there. So that's something that we're definitely starting to look into, especially on the modified side.
Yeah, what are you hearing, Chad?
The shorter right front spring is going to lower the spring table a little bit, so it'll get on the right
Right.
front just a little bit harder. So if the rules allow, I think somebody's making a 9.5 and then they're making an 8.5, right? I think it is.
I think that's right.
So if
Yep.
you run the 9.5 in the left front and the 8.5 in the right front, then that spring table is automatically going to be lower on the right front and help the car get on the right front corner.
Yeah, it definitely would be an advantage to help and control that spring table for sure. Um, John, how much right side trail do you guys prefer? Well, John, I think it all depends on the car. the racetrack and the tire that you have. All that being said, in our IMCA world, we actually don't run much static trail because we get 3 inches of rear steer, which puts trail in the car anyway. So what I've found is more keeping that magic steer number the same is what's most important, than anything else as far as their rear alignment. Now, if you're having trouble with the car turning, you definitely could put some trail in it, but I don't know if that's as important as it used to be. Now we seem to focus on the steer number more. Hey, you guys, I have a Northern Sport mod and I'm trying to update it from the 200-pound left spring to a 150. I wanted to know when I put that in, should I jack the left rear up to dynamic and screw my weight jack down an inch, or just get the left side at the same static? I've heard both ways. Don't know what to get out of the left field. Uh, I would do it however you've been doing it with the stiffer spring. I mean, you're going to have to put more load in that just because it's a softer spring, but I don't think I'd do anything different. I mean, what do you guys think?
Well,
I
I
would
think you
say, go ahead, Chad.
maintain your ride height, right? I mean,
Right.
the softer spring is going to be wound tighter than the 200, so I think you should do it on the scales, get your ride height, and make sure your ride heights are correct. And you're going to be squishing the 150 more than the 200. It's going to be pre-wound, so and it's going to lower your spring table. So that's one thing to look at too. Also, there is making sure that your left screw jack tip doesn't get too low, and then the car won't get on the right rear hard enough.
I'm 100% in line with Chad. It's exactly the direction I was going to go.
Craig, how do I get right front wheel load numbers for your notebook on a UMP modified with a bump stop? Yeah, I wouldn't have a clue on that one, so that's all up to you guys.
I would say that's a combined number. So you're going to do your load number, and then you're going to take whatever that center to center is that you're measuring your load stick at, and then put your shock with the bump stop and your spring smasher, preferably your Ultra Force one, right, Chad?
Yeah.
um, and get your bump load there, and then ultimately you're gonna that's something to play with on a regular basis. Finding the combination that works for you, is every car is a little bit different, right? So, but it's a combined. You just basically take your spring load and then your bump load from the spring smasher, and you combine those together, and that's your load in that corner.
Awesome. Jamie, Bob, what's your thoughts on running a 5-inch diameter front spring in a stock car rather than a 5.5? Well, my first question is a 5-inch or a 5.5 inch, as long as it's the same rate, it makes no difference whether you got a 5 or a 5.5. The problem you're going to run into is with that metric lower control arm in that stock car that's designed for that 5.5-inch spring, and you're not going to fit the helix in, so you're going to create an inconsistency because the spring's just not going to fit in the lower A-frame correctly. We used to, on our Chevelle frames, we used to actually have a die that we had built, and they were coming from us kind of inconsistent. And so we always pressed the die in there to make sure that spring fit that lower A-frame perfect, because it's just such a crucial factor to get that consistent spring rate. Okay. Hey, Steve, shout out to T. Zoc. The man is awesome with your customers.
Man, he is the best fabricator. he's like an artist of a fabricator that can work as fast as a production guy, and he is so passionate about these things and just enjoys helping people. He's he's quiet, but he's got a heart of gold, and he just loves to see people succeed. And man, oh man, like if I could back up time and go back racing full time again, the things I would do to have him along as a crew chief would, like, I can't tell you the things I would do to have him along, because man, is he a sharp guy, and he can fabricate anything.
Wow. Awesome to have a guy like that, and definitely need to praise him whenever you can.
Absolutely. We
Um,
actually just built a new a clean sheet late model. We've only raced it once. We've tested it a bunch of times, and Tim built that thing from the ground up. Built all the jigs, built all the fixturing, built everything. And we actually had Greg Ives out. He's one of the lead engineers over at Hendrick Motorsports, and he was looking at the jigs and everything that he built, and he's like, this is nicer stuff, and how he's done all this is nicer than a lot of what they used to do in the Cup world, building their stuff. So Tim was he had a career building Cup cars at RCR, and God, it's just like sometimes people think we have a robot at our shop welding, and then they come in, they see it's just him, and he's that good.
wow. Tyler, what are your guys' thoughts on the new spec engine rule for IMCA modifieds? Um, I myself don't have enough information yet to make a good opinion one way or the other. Have you guys heard anything about that?
I got nothing.
Yeah.
I've got nothing.
Um, Michael, playing with front end, A mod and B mod. What do you think about setting camber and caster in dynamic? Um, we've been doing it the last few races, but the caster and camber gain and loss from static to dynamic is dramatic. Um, Currently working on correcting the curves, but I'm wasting my time considering that the car lives in dynamic. And if so, should I apply my standard static numbers to the dynamic, close to what Bob has been recommending? Um, I left instant and roll centers out on purpose as we've got it close. Thank you. Um, what's your guys' thoughts?
I always live dynamically. I mean, the car, who cares what it is going straight down the straightaway? I care what it is in the middle of the corner when I'm trying to go fastest and faves two of the corners. So I always looked at dynamically. But I'm curious to see what Longhorn says.
Honestly, we're in the same boat. So, and the reality is all the numbers that you come up with are all just references, right? So the biggest thing is we just have to make sure we do it consistently. But to have a better understanding when you make an adjustment, to have a better understanding of what's happening, why it's happening, and really be able to make the complementing adjustments properly, if you want to say that. I think having your reference being in dynamic is crucial. It's where we live, right? Like we don't. The only time we're at ride height is driving through the pits, and heck, half the time in the pits we're not even at ride height anymore. So it's
Yep.
that's where we're at.
Now, I was told some of the late model stuff has the right front to the point where static, it basically goes through static and then dynamic where nothing really actually changes.
That's one of the things that we've put a lot of effort into, and just it's really understand that the reality of it is, once we get to dynamic, once we get to posture these days, we're really not coming out of it. Like the motion that we're having isn't much more than 3/4 of an inch up on that right front. um so they're really, the static number is really irrelevant.
Okay.
Yeah, like it just we don't. If we are there, we've got bigger problems to worry about anyways, right? Something else has went terribly wrong. That if we're at our static posture out on the racetrack.
Yeah. Well, that I would completely agree with that. Um, Rick, questions for Steve. Are you going to have any more tech support in the future for us guys running IMCA Longhorns? McKinney doesn't run much IMCA. He has helped us as much as he can.
Absolutely. So we're glad to help as best we can. We're not up there racing the IMCA stuff all the time, but one of the things that we are excited about is we have teamed up with Colin Hibden, and Colin Hibden is going to be leading the charge for IMCA stuff now going forward, and he's going to have his dealership and everything. That all of our IMCA sales are actually going exclusively through him moving forward. So we're more than happy to help if you want to call myself or Tim or just call the shop and they can get us hooked up. We've also got Joe and Matt over in the Longhorn Dynamic side on the shock side that we can help with. And then if you get in touch with Colin as well, he's just a tremendous kid and a talent beyond belief as well. So that's what we got going on the IMCA side going forward.
Eric, question for Steve. With all the things learned as a company through testing and racing on the late model side, do you feel these are closely applicable on the modified side of things? Obviously, the aero advantage and the big tires is a huge factor.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that does translate, and theories and physics doesn't change, right? Like physics is physics. So, but on the other side of it, it's a completely different tire, completely different aero loads going around the racetrack, and all that. So there's some stuff that does absolutely translate. One of the things actually we've actually learned quite a bit of stuff for our late models from our modifieds as well. So a lot of the stuff that we have come across on the modified side has actually been applicable over on the late model side. So, but as much as the cars are built about 30 feet from each other, Tim, who builds every single modified that comes out of our shop, he's actually the guy that builds every new part and piece that we test and build and everything for the late model. So every ounce of that information is directly applicable to our modified program, and we definitely use it when we can.
Hmm. Matt, does the car actually know how long the spring is, and how would it affect how it handles without changing load numbers? The spring table is the issue.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's what the car knows is where the spring table is at. And with the right spring table being lower than the left spring table, it's going to automatically want to transfer load to that right front more than if you had the opposite effect, no matter what size spring or what weight spring you had. So what's your opinion on power glides and what gear would you recommend for an IMCA sport mod? Boy, Robert, I have no experience with the power glide. I've seen some of them have issues. I like the old clutch and the old basic stuff. Gear wise, that's all going to depend on where you're racing. I mean, it takes a different gear to run Boone Speedway as it does Marshalltown Speedway or any of those racetracks. So sorry, I can't really help you with what the gear would be there because it's more dependent on the racetrack that you actually go to. Uh, Dave, OE in the house.
Double O, eh?
Boy. What's your thoughts on setting the front end to keep caster split close, or is it not as much of a concern to you? Um, I'm not a real big fan of a lot of caster split. Some guys like more caster split because the car will tend to turn left on its own a little bit better. Um, you know, I just like a race car that's pretty balanced. And when you start having things that are quite a bit different from side to side, I think that affects the balance more than it does anything else. And so I'm not big with having, just like, I'm not a big fan of having a whole bunch of left rear bite compared to not left rear bite. I kind of like to keep everything as neutral as it can be, and so then the driver can kind of, if the car's not perfect in that situation, at least the driver can kind of overcome some things and drive around it. Where if the car is clear out of whack and has all kinds of different weird stuff built into it, sometimes it's a little harder to accommodate. Um, Jason, I'm considering racing again after 15 years at Electric City Speedway in Great Falls. Was thinking of stock car. Well, everybody that has went to that stock car, especially if they haven't raced for a while, love that thing. I have yet to hear anybody that say they didn't like their IMCA stock car. Kelly Shyrock's a prime example. His statement was, "It just matches my driving style, and it's just fun." I think we might have lost Steve. His battery probably went dead.
That could be.
So, considering how close the prices are for used Midwest and stock cars, it has me second guessing it. The mod, I think, is easier to repair, usually race damage, but then there's more finicky things to set up and more garage setup time. Um, Once again, the modified class or the stock car class is kind of the thing to have out here right now. And everybody says they're just a blast to drive, and they just have a lot of fun racing them. Um, Once again, you can race them things pretty much about everywhere. I mean, there's not a lot of difference between IMCA and USRA rules in a stock car. There's just a few little changes you have to make, where sometimes the modified stuff is maybe a little more difficult. There we go. No problem. Well, that's what I told Chad. I said, I bet his battery lost.
Yep.
Well, when you're on it for a long time like this, they can suck it dead pretty quickly.
Isn't that the truth?
Okay, Jason has a question. Steve, IMCA modified left rear on a coilover behind. Any testing done? We tried with your set of two shocks. Any opinion?
So there's a lot of guys that'll like the shock inside the left rear behind. I'm personally not a fan of it. We don't run that on any of our stuff right now. Personally, I think it's too much instant traction and it's gone in a hurry. I've just never felt like it lasts. I feel like every time we have run it, it's been more of a crutch to get us out of the hole, but it wasn't a proper solution for having a good balanced setup. And I've always been a balanced guy. I've always been a get myself into the corner, get myself through the corner, and forward traction for the most part takes care of itself, right? So that's and with that, everything activates so fast, and it's so hard to be consistent in a bunch of traffic when you have to get out of the gas quick. If you're just looking for a qualifying setup, by all means, you can lay down a fast lap with that. But I just personally don't think that's the way to go for a consistent balanced car.
I couldn't have said it any better. That was awesome. Um, okay, next one, Steve, pull bar mount, rear end, quick change.
Keep reading. He's the next one too.
Oh, Sorry. Hit the wrong button on the rear mount on the pull bar. Moving left to right effects.
You're saying moving the pull bar left and right
I'm
on the rear end?
assuming that's what he's talking about, is moving the pull bar right to left.
I think it's just a matter of loading your rear end, right? If you're pushing, if you're applying the load to the rear end for the left, you're gonna change the balance of how that load that the pull bar is putting through the rear end is distributed. Um, you can. I think an easy mistake that people will make is just traction, 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 get that left rear in the ground and just make that thing dig and just squish that tire when you get on the gas. So making sure that you find a balanced location. That's definitely a tool. That's definitely a knob that will change your car. But what I look for in that is being able to get back to the gas as early as possible and be able to keep your tires hooked up and finish the corner without having to jab the gas to make the car turn, right? If you've got it too far to the left and you're trying to load up that left rear too much and you have to spike the throttle pedal to get the car to initiate its turn, you've lost all the benefit of any traction you have in your left rear at that point. So
Yeah.
I would say finding that balanced location that it applies the load that it's generating as equally as it needs to be able to get to the gas and finish the corner and keeping the car underneath you.
Philip says, Longhorn stock car, question mark.
We've had a lot of calls, a lot of emails, a lot of that stuff over the last little while. It's honestly, we're incredibly fortunate for the success we've had. Like I said earlier on in the show, with all the success we had, with all the people that have put their faith in us, comes a lot of responsibility, and we don't want to get too big for our britches, and we really want to focus on continuing to develop, continuing to build modifieds and late models, and making sure that we're giving all of our teams everything they need to go out and continue to win races. So at this time, and the other side of it is we got a beautiful facility down here in North Carolina, but we are busting at the seams already. We are plumb full. So even if we wanted to, I don't think we'd have space to put a jig right now.
Ah. Uh, Jim. Jim wants to know about if he should call the BHE shop to purchase the online tooling school. Well, technically, you should be able to purchase that online if you go to you can go to the BHE website or you can go to the RTI website, and you should be able to click on that school and should still be able to buy it. If you can't, um, definitely call the shop before 3 o'clock in the next couple of days, because Amy will be working and she can definitely get you set up with what you need to do there. Speaking of that, once again, the online schools are still available. They will be available 24/7 for as long as time is. If anybody missed our stock car school or our 4-link school or the 2-link school, they are available online. Um, all schools this year, I was very impressed with the schools and the people that came to the schools this year. I felt that this was probably our best year ever as far as chassis schools went. We had Tom Barry with Chad at the 4-link school, and Tom did an awesome job, and of course Chad always does an awesome job. Chad and I've been doing these things so long together. It's kind of like he knows how to answer my questions. Or if I say something wrong, he's real polite about explaining, well, here's another way to look at it. So anyway, Steve, what's the difference between the UMP and the USMTS Longhorn mod?
Honestly, from a suspension point standpoint and all that, everything's the same. There's a couple differences on the chassis. Just to satisfy the USRA rules. They have a different set of rules on different places that they measure and everything. So really, that's about it. But from a geometry standpoint and all that, everything is the same.
Awesome. Bob wants to know, how do you put preload in the left rear of a street stock and a stock car? What would you suggest, Chad?
Well, I'm assuming he doesn't have screw jacks. Like it's not a screw jack car.
Well, if it's a street stock, some street stocks do, some don't. Stock
Yeah.
cars do.
Yeah, I mean, if it's as easy as the screw jack, then you would put a softer, taller spring in there and preload it more, having that preload in there. If it's a rule that you can't have a screw jack, then it would become shim spacers, or I don't know what your
Yeah.
rule is about, but there's different spacers that you can put in there to manipulate ride height and your spring load. So not 100% sure what you got going on there with the street stock, but that's the two ways you would do it.
We still have quite a few questions here. Kyle, to the guy with the transmission question, stay away from the power glides for racing. Don't ask, just trust the process.
Amen.
Amen. That's kind of what I would have probably said, but due to the fact that I have some people in the business that build power glides, you got to be somewhat sensible about what you do say and what you don't say. So in other words, you don't say anything, you just talk for a little bit and hope for the best.
I wish I would have learned that way sooner.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, it's, politics they're involved in everything. I mean, you just got to be, yeah. Trust me, it took me a long time to learn to just keep my mouth shut. Tori, who's your H500 or E-Mod M60 on all four corners of a stock car? Boy, Tori, I'm not familiar with those tires at all. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. Philip, on a stock car, what changes do you like to make as the night goes on and the track slows down? Well, you're probably on a stock car. My left front and my right rear shocks are two changes that I tend to make very often. The stock cars, you're sort of limited in what you can do. We do play with the, right rear trailing arm location up and down. That stuff can make a big difference, take some angle out of it. The problem is a lot of times people will want to take angle and level that right rear trailing arm out, but you still have to rotate the corner and the car still has to steer. So sometimes you can actually tighten it up too much. Like I said, I kind of tend to like the shock changes, wedge changes a little bit, those type of things. Moving lead around is another big thing that definitely helps the stock cars. Kyle, opinion on the new Camaro body for the IMCA stock cars? Well, they look different. They're kind of cool. If you asked my body guy that mounted it, he wouldn't have anything favorable to say about it because they were a bitch to mount. The problem is the cars are just not built for that body. I mean, you really actually, you should, if you're going to run that body and that's going to become a thing of the future, there's a few things on the car you actually need to change. The tail section needs to be shortened a little bit. Some of those type of things would make it better. But, on the racetrack, once they're all lettered up and everything, I mean, they look pretty cool. Okay. Jim wants to congratulate the success on the 00A.
Well, thank you, sir.
Sorry, good guy. Landon, Steve, what's your thoughts on the left rear shock on top of the bird cage going backward towards the fuel cell?
So on our UMP stuff, we run it. We don't run it on the bird cage. We run it on top of the housing, on the backside of the housing, just inside the bird cage, and kind of going back, mounting right beside the spring. Um, we've we've went back and forth from mounting it there and on the front of the on the front of the bird cage. Honestly, from a handling standpoint, I I personally think it builds a little bit more traction getting on the gas. I I can't say that it's night and day difference from a handling characteristic standpoint. We can we can run very close to the same speeds with it on the bird cage as we do when we're on top of the axle tube. But I feel like throughout a 10 or a 15 lap run, you're going to have a smaller gap in lap times with the shock up on top. And to give you an honest answer as to why, I don't understand that quite yet, but it's definitely proven to be slightly better for us.
Dwayne, do you use the same valving shock combo on the late model as you do on a modified Longhorn?
We do not. So we definitely use the same theories and everything. But there's with the complexity in the late model shock and what you're able to do with them being the triple adjustable and the canister shocks and so on and so forth. It opens up a whole different realm of options and technology that you have access to.
Kyle says, Philip, I just go talk to Chad Wehrs and hand him my wallet.
Banjo said we're money by speed. Banjo Speed Shop.
There you go. No doubt about that. All right. It's 8 o'clock. Don't forget, this year the Harris Clash is at Boone Speedway, June 24th. So mark your calendars for that. Next week, Chad and I will have a special show for you. We'll have Joel Smith from Close Racing on there. Thanks, Steve. We appreciate you being on tonight. It was a real honor to have you on the show, and glad you could come on and had time to do that.
Like, man, I can't tell you how excited I was when you reached out a couple weeks ago. It's an honor to be on here and so cool to see what you both have accomplished in this space and for you guys to want to bring me on. It's an honor. So thank you very much. And if I can ever help with anything in the future, you always got my number.
All right, got to be careful when you say that.
Hey, Chad's constantly building us. We got parts, so every single car of ours that goes out the door has Wehrs parts on it. So Chad does a wonderful job for us and for the whole sport, for that matter. So it's a lot of fun working with them. A lot of fun seeing what they come up with, and there's not many guys in the space that there's always going to be problems, right? So we had I forget what it was, something that just wasn't quite fitting right on a new wheel, and we called Chad, and it was God. It seems like it was just minutes later he had the problem fixed. So it's not too often you find companies like that to work with. So it's pretty cool being able to work with Wehrs Machine.
Yeah, thank you guys for what you do for us.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We will see you next week, and have a good week, everybody.
Thanks,
Take care, you
everybody.
guys.